Well, the Trump administration faces another deadline today to turn over evidence to Kilmar Abrego Garcia's lawyers.
Now Van Hollen says he is not vouching for Abrego Garcia, only his constitutional rights.
All right, you may have noticed a lot of Democrats are just not talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You know, the Maryland man who was illegally deported down to El Salvador, according to Democrats. But now, all of a sudden, nothing. We are not hearing about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. However, behind the scenes, there's actually a lot more going on than most people know. Let's dig into it. You'll find it rather interesting.
Well, the Trump administration faces another deadline today to turn over evidence to Kilmar Abrego Garcia's lawyers. As we've reported, a court order protected the Maryland resident from deportation to El Salvador, but he was sent anyway. When discussing Abrego Garcia's mistaken deportation, President Trump said he did not know if it was his job to uphold the Constitution, and wavered when asked if every person in the U.S. is entitled to due process.
All right, so even though Democrats are not talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia directly, behind the scenes, there is still a legal battle. Right now, this judge right here, Paula Xinis, a court district judge out of Maryland, she has ordered the Trump administration, you do have to show evidence that you have tried to free Kilmar Abrego Garcia out of that El Salvadorian prison. That is due right now. Also, what's due or coming up on May 9th, this judge will actually have a deposition. She will speak to members of the Trump administration to see if they have actually been trying to free Kilmar Abrego Garcia. However, this is also happening.
Jeffries denies that he told Democrats to stop going to Central America. Others are planning trips, including a visit to Honduras.
I'm planning on going, and I think we should continue to go. So I think it makes sense for us to check on them, make sure they're okay. And at a minimum, since there's a multi-million-dollar contract with El Salvador to house these people, shouldn't somebody go take a look and make sure we're getting our money's worth for this?
So as you can see, the conversation has shifted. We're not going down to El Salvador only for Kilmar Abrego Garcia. We are there for oversight. And Jasmine Crockett, by the way, wants to be in charge of oversight. We will get to that later in the video, but let's continue.
Due process is a critical bedrock principle in this country. I don't know much about Mr. Garcia, but what I do know is that Donald Trump has been rounding up grad students and sending them, off.
Democratic Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen met with Abrego Garcia in El Salvador a few weeks ago, but now Van Hollen says he is not vouching for Abrego Garcia, only his constitutional rights. Other Democrats echo that sentiment.
Now, I am really curious how you guys all feel about this. I have been saying this from the very beginning, before we even saw the police recording of Kilmar Abrego Garcia getting pulled over in Tennessee. This was going to be, and now is, one of the biggest disasters within the Democrat Party in recent history, because the polls are getting lower and lower and lower, and now all of a sudden we are focusing on oversight. But it's starting to make sense.
Now that we know that they are doing things such as, snatching people off the streets and throwing them down in what I would consider to be concentration camps or prisons, and these are people that haven't been convicted of anything, and it's wrong. Listen, we have oversight over them. If we are in a contract with El Salvador, then it is us that have to decide as to whether or not they are violating human rights. And so we have to be given an opportunity to inspect.
Now, here's where things get very interesting. Not too long after that interview where Jasmine Crockett is talking about oversight, how we have contracts with El Salvador, then this happened.
I am the vice ranker on the oversight committee, and if given an opportunity to lead, I am ready to go on day one.
And so you are throwing your hat in the ring for that?
If there is an election, he's not resigned his post, but we know that he's not seeking re-election, so it may be next term before that post opens.
Why do you think that you would be the best Democrat to take that position?
Because I think
which is essentially to fight the president and his agenda.
Exactly. It is. Listen, oversight has so much latitude. But beyond that, we are allowed to conduct investigations. We are allowed to send out subpoenas and get documents. And here's the deal. My legal experience, I think, helps me be able to kind of guide through that part.
All right, so I am really curious how you guys all feel about this. The main argument that Republicans and conservatives have, whether or not it's true, is that Democrats seem to only talk about Kilmar Abrego Garcia in the context of another policy. So, yeah, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, he was plucked away, and this is why we need oversight, and this is why I might run to be the next head of oversight. You know, things like that.
But I gotta say that for as bleak of a picture as Tommy is painting of what is going on in the Democratic Party, we are up 4 to 7 points on the generic ballot right now. Donald Trump is underwater on every single important metric, including immigration overall. He's up on when it comes to deportations and securing the border. But when people look at his immigration policy writ large, they don't like what they're seeing. The American public knows that Abrego Garcia's issue, it's about due process, and it's not about the man himself, that there are many innocent people that are in that prison in El Salvador who don't deserve to be there. So he's not managing the economy well. Everyone knows that a tariff is a tax on the American consumer. He's too focused on, tariffing the movie industry.
I don't hear a lot of people crying tears over Abrego Garcia.
Well, it's 2 to 1 favoring bringing him back, and then deport him under proper channels, but don't send him to a prison for a life sentence.
So I think you'll find this rather interesting as well. Democrats are still very convinced that people do want Kilmar Abrego Garcia back in America, but they also do want him re-deported. Again, this story is just shifting left and right. At first it was, you should have never done this, Americans don't want it. Now Americans do want him back. They also want him deported, but at the same time, he does need to speak in front of a judge.
What we thought we'd do is a self-deport, where we're going to pay each one a certain amount of money, and we're going to get them a beautiful flight back to where they came from, and they have a period of time. And if they make it, we're going to work with them so that maybe someday, with a little work, they can come back in if they're good people, if they're the kind of people that we want in our company, industrious people that could love our country. And if they're not, they won't. But it will give them a path to becoming, to coming back into the country. If they miss that limit, they're going to be taken out of our country, and they will never get a path to come back in, and it'll be a much tougher process.
Now, this is where things get very complex, because now the Trump administration has given a pathway, a moral and profitable pathway for an illegal immigrant to self-deport. So again, the reason why this is relevant, it looks like Democrats, I am not seeing almost any arguments where Democrats can truly face this new policy, because this is as moral as it gets. If you are not a criminal, why would you not just self-deport, get back in line, and then you can do things the illegal way if we are providing you an opportunity to do it and we are giving you money? Again, a lot of this conversation is shifting. We'll have to wait and see how Democrats respond to this.
On immigration and a whole number of other issues right now are confused about their party's messaging. To go back to immigration, to hear that some members of the party are going to El Salvador trying to raise support while others are saying, this is not our issue, Trump wins on this, we'll be quiet on it. What's your message to people who are worried the Democrats still do not have their stuff together for this fight?
Well, I think that the core message is that Democrats are going to fight for working class and poor people across this country. And we're going to fight to give you the things you need to have a decent life, right? Affordable housing, a roof over your head, food on the table, education for your kids, retirement with dignity, healthcare, childcare. Those are the critical things that people need to thrive. I think at the same time, you can have a very populist working class agenda that takes on the billionaires and the biggest corporations that are screwing a lot of Americans across this country right now. They're getting richer. Everybody else is getting poorer.
So I hope you caught that. Even on MSNBC, the news anchor was trying to lead into that question, talking about deportations, and she was not having it. She was not going to talk about Kilmar Abrego Garcia or anything on immigration. However, I do find this clip actually a little ironic, and I won't be surprised if we start to see more Democrats calling out other Democrats who are ashamed to talk about these deportations live on TV.
Disgrace that none of my Republican colleagues will speak up against this money for golf, against the obvious and egregious due process violations. I know you. I know you are good people. I know you care about due process. You care about the rule of law. And I know in your private moments, when you think about Kilmar Abrego Garcia and you see that the administration admitted that he was wrongly deported and sent to a prison in El Salvador, that you know that the president should simply correct the mistake, bring him back home so he can go through the proper court system. When are you going to speak publicly? When are you going to speak out for simple due process, which is the bedrock of our country? Because now it's going from Kilmar Abrego to American citizens, and who knows when it will be next. Donald Trump's not listening to me, but he will listen to you all. And I urge you to speak up for the good of our Constitution and our...
Now, I do want to point this out. I will actually agree with this representative. It is absolutely true that Republicans and conservatives, you're not really hearing from them. You don't really know how they feel about this. This is because the mass majority of Republicans and conservatives all agree the case is over. The deportation is over. They want to focus on other deportations and other cases, especially in the case of sanctuary cities. But I also want to point out, I really do think representatives like him, he's from New York City, and other Democrats, we're probably going to see more and more Democrats call out other Democrats. Why are you not talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia? And why are you making it so obvious that it looks like you're only talking about the guy just so you look good on TV, but to try and get something out of it? You're not actually trying to help him out. I really do think we're going to see this in the near future.
Based on your time as a DEA agent in the field, particularly in Mexico, these tattoos are consistent with MS-13 associations.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Do you know of any other set of combinations that would suggest some other organization this represents?
With this particular one, no, sir.
Now, if you are still watching this video, I really appreciate it. Let me circle back to the beginning. Again, right now, not too many people are really hearing about or talking about this legal battle really going on behind the scenes. And again, we will actually see legit depositions according to this judge and according to other outlets. Now, I don't think it's going to be broadcasted, and we will have to wait and see what happens. There are some other judges who are saying, hey, I might bring on some more Trump administration members and have them sit in front of court and explain what's going on. So again, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But Kilmar Abrego Garcia, it looks like this story is slowly going away. I don't know how Democrats are going to absolutely pivot to another story, but also I think the Trump administration, it looks like they're being a little more careful on these deportations. It looks like, again, they're really going to focus on these self-deportations and give a proper incentive, a moral and monetary one. So again, we'll see what happens. Thank you guys for everything. God bless, and we'll see you all later.